Before the main topic, I wanted to quickly mention how I just got back from MDev, which is a Midwestern game development conference where I got to show off my game, My Android Sweetheart. I had a blast, meeting a lot of cool people and noting places my game can improve. By the way, the game demo is available now on Steam and itch.io, so check the description for links. Also, after coming back, I opened a Discord server for the project where I'll be posting new builds for playtesting. Yeah, so join the Discord if you're interested in that. Anyways, on to the video. People have a hard time coming up with a definition for Metroidvania. It tends to be associated with these 2D platformers with hard bosses and collectible weapons, but people also apply it to these first-person games or even games without any combat. Some claim the genre is about exploration, but then you see plenty of games with exploration that aren't at all Metroidvanias. What gives? What's making people categorize games this way? What is a Metroidvania? It's important to note here that we're trying to define the concept, not create it. The concept of Metroidvania, as its name suggests, has already been formed by looking at concrete examples. We can already identify a large list of Metroidvanias: Super Metroid, Symphony of the Night, Hollow Knight, Axiom Verge, Blasphemous, Metroid Prime, Shantae and the Pirate's Curse, and more. Our goal here is to give definition to this pre-existing concept, to understand it, to look and ask what makes these games what they are. Why are they Metroidvanias? To devise a solid definition, let's get philosophical for a moment. Greek philosopher Aristotle gives us the anatomy of a definition which allows for easy understanding and categorizing of concepts. A definition has two parts, the genus and the differentia. The genus names the broader category to which the concept belongs, while the differentia names its essential characteristic. Think of it like a file folder with a file inside. The folder name reminds you what is contained inside, and each file has a name which both distinguishes it from the other ones and communicates its essence. It's important to capture the essence, as we'll discuss later. When searching for the genus of a concept, you're answering the question, what is this a type of? For example, a chair is a type of furniture, and an apple is a type of fruit. So let us ask, what is Metroidvania a type of? You might be tempted to classify it as a subgenre of platformers or adventure games, but there are or could be Metroidvanias which aren't those things. I'm of the belief that most types of games could potentially be Metroidvanias. The genre isn't limited to Souls-like platformers or first-person shooters. We'll go with video game for the genus. As for the differentia, we'll need to identify not only characteristics which distinguish Metroidvanias from non-Metroidvania games, but the essential characteristic or characteristics. An essential characteristic is that which is responsible for all or most other distinguishing characteristics. A well-chosen essential will bring to mind the other characteristics, or at least provide a lead to deducing them. For instance, humans are distinguished from other animals in that they can both talk and do math, but their essential is their ability known as reason, which makes those things possible. Considering this, Aristotle defines humans as the rational animals. To start our search for the essential, let's list off some distinguishing characteristics of Metroidvanias. As I've studied the genre for at least 3 years, and played it for even longer, I have a head start on this. Metroidvanias are known for their interconnected worlds with maze-like branching paths. These worlds are distinct from level-based linear game worlds as well as open worlds. They're sort of a middle ground. As well, Metroidvanias feature collectible upgrades to the player's abilities. These upgrades serve as keys which interact with locked down parts of the environment. Note that they are distinct from other collectibles. In other types of adventure games, like point-and-clicks or horror games, collectible items are most often one-time use MacGuffins, not permanent ability upgrades. Finally, Metroidvanias are distinguished by their open embrace of backtracking. This backtracking is not optional, but woven into the game's design. You're meant to branch out until you find a dead end, and then turn around and look for another path. Ideally, this backtracking is player-directed, meaning the game doesn't tell you where to go next, but you must use your knowledge to infer your next destination. Games with these three traits are what we think of when we think of Metroidvanias. Any game which prioritizes them is more of a Metroidvania, and any game which excludes or diminishes them is less of one. But how can we know this? By introspection. We can validate or invalidate this claim by looking for counterexamples. Can we think of any Metroidvanias which exclude these three characteristics? Perhaps Metroid Fusion? Fusion is often compared against Super Metroid, but both are generally considered Metroidvanias. However, the thing to keep in mind is that it's Fusion's similarities to Super Metroid, not its differences, which make it a member of the genre. You might say, of course Fusion is a Metroidvania. Look at all the upgrades you get which allow you to access new areas. Look at the roundabout exploration you have to do to get to your destination. Look at the way you go back and forth revisiting sectors. If Fusion lacked these similarities, it would be better categorized as a visual novel or a mere shooter platformer akin to Mega Man. It's because Fusion has these similarities that it can be argued to be a Metroidvania. It's just that, it compromises and waters them down, making itself less of a Metroidvania than Super. Are there any other counterexamples? What about Cave Story? The world of Cave Story is comparatively less labyrinthian and less interconnected than other games. Most areas of the game are linear corridors accessed from an in-world level select. Its collectible items mostly consist of upgrades to firepower or context-sensitive MacGuffin items. I can think of 3 upgrades which increase the player's traversal abilities, 2 of which aren't required to complete the game and essentially do the same thing. Backtracking is only needed for optional items, and there are several points at which it's prevented. Progress is mostly driven by story moments or character interactions. It seems the game is not primarily designed around the 3 characteristics I mentioned, but around maximizing replay value through multiple endings tied to missable secrets. The game is literally a cave story, first and foremost. So then, on what grounds can it be argued to be a Metroidvania? I can only think that it's on superficial grounds. Cave Story may not walk the Metroidvania walk, but it talks the Metroid talk. It's a highly vertical shooter platformer taking place in a mysterious cave system with health and missile upgrades all over the place. Thus, it would feel weird not acknowledging Metroid's influence on it. However, to define Metroidvania by such characteristics would create issues. Games which bear no design similarities at all to Metroid would be included, and games which have very similar design but dissimilar aesthetics would be excluded. To avoid this issue, it's best to get past the superficial. Metroidvania is not an aesthetic category, but a game design category. It's not about whether a game paints itself to look like Metroid, but whether it's constructed to function like a Metroid game. Thus, there's really not much backing to claims that Cave Story is a Metroidvania, at least that it's primarily trying to be one. So, the 3 characteristics of Metroidvania I've identified held up under some scrutiny. But that still doesn't explain much. Why would the developers choose these in particular? What experience is being created by them? Why maze-like game worlds? Why permanent upgrades? Why mandatory backtracking? To try to figure it out, let's introspect to identify how each design choice differentiates it from other possibilities. What do maze-like interconnected worlds offer a player? Mazes require you to identify a large number of tightly knit spatial units. In Metroidvanias, these units are usually the rooms. They make navigation more challenging since you must consider the spatial relationships between the rooms. If you have a destination in mind, you still have to find the most viable path to that destination. Contrast this against open worlds, where you can generally approach your destination from anywhere. It requires far less mental RAM to navigate in open spaces than in tight, maze-like ones. The game's space is also constantly recontextualized by new upgrades. Upgrades represent new capabilities. The implications for their use reach further than your typical key item in an adventure game. More than a simple addition to your inventory, Metroidvania upgrades add to your moveset. They unlock new context-insensitive actions which allow the player to be more proactive in figuring out how and where they're used. Backtracking, then, follows naturally. These upgrades are at their most impactful after the player has already made note of certain mysterious mechanisms, immediately recalling all of them once it's made clear they can now interact with them. Backtracking is the special sauce that gives Metroidvania its potency. It's what pays off, or cashes in on, all the design work behind the world and upgrades. It's what delivers the specific appeal of the genre. It's what is built up to by all the exploration and curiosity. Similar to the aha moment provided by puzzle games, which is the payoff of all their design choices, backtracking provides opportunity for an oh yeah moment, and is the payoff for Metroidvania's design choices. Thus, I may say that backtracking is the soul of Metroidvania. This oh yeah moment is a specific type of payoff. It relies on the player having committed certain key details to memory to be recalled later. Thus, Metroidvania, in essence, is a memory challenge.
Given how most Metroidvanias are also adventure games, I'd like to specifically call them memory adventures.
You could say something like, Super Metroid is a memory adventure platformer, as it's an adventure where you'll need to remember stuff. That communicates the essence of the challenge provided by the genre. This grasp on the essence now equips us to better understand what characteristics distinguish Metroidvania and why. We can understand to what extent a supposed Metroidvania actually delivers a Metroidvania experience. It's the extent to which it is a memory adventure, the extent to which it embraces design choices that test the player's memory. This helps elucidate why sequence breaking is not a distinguishing characteristic of the genre. Sequence breaking, which is the ability to progress a game in multiple possible orders or sequences, isn't a requirement for delivering this oh yeah moment. It's not part of the memory adventure formula. While that is the case, sequence breaking is, of course, a welcome addition to Metroidvania, as it, along with randomizers, allows you to test your memory in new ways upon repeat playthroughs. It allows you to almost play the game fresh after becoming familiar with the world. Finally, this grasp on the essential allows me, a Metroidvania designer, to fully understand the experience I'm creating. I now know where to focus my efforts, making sure to maximize the opportunity for these oh yeah moments.
Join my Discord!